Hey guys, your favorite streamer and mine, Allison Dara, has recently opened submissions for their Hall of Eam community event, as I'm sure you are already aware. This was the result of viewers like you spending those hard earned frobs on the latest of Allison's community goals, and it allows viewers to vote for a game or games to be played on the Allison Dara Twitch channel sometime in the future. The full rules for this event are on the Discord server, which you should already be a part of, and the voting deadline is probably around the 27th, give or take, somewhere around there. Feel free to pull up your copy of the ballot as you watch. To decide which game or games will be played, voters will provide a ballot with up to 10 qualifying games previously submitted during Phase 1 by community members. There are a lot of good choices there. A lot of good choices. This video is largely going to be me yapping about the 10 games that I've chosen to put on my ballot, as of right now, to varying degrees of detail. For the games I have readily accessible, I will also provide some gameplay footage. For the rest, I will try to find something interesting to put on the screen for you. I have arranged these games in alphabetical order. We've got a lot to get through, so let's get to it. Etrian Odyssey is a JRPG series with a focus on dungeon crawling, atmosphere, discovery, and good old fashioned not quite knowing what the hell is happening. In a positive way. My introduction to the series and most of my experience with it is with EO2, which I found in a bargain pile at GameStop many years ago. I fell in love immediately, despite some early friction with the not quite knowing what the hell is happening of it all. Drawing your own map on the touchscreen really takes me back to the days of old school dungeon crawlers that I would play on my grandpa's clunky project PCs in his basement, and even tabletop role playing games where, you don't see what the dungeon master sees and you've got to kind of sketch things out on your own paper, figure it out with the group. A lot of fun. It is nowhere near as tedious to do mapping in Etrian Odyssey as it is in either of those previously mentioned genres. You are free to apply whatever level of detail you desire. I've seen players who do basically no mapping and or rely exclusively on the auto mapping functions. Personally, I like adding lots of little shorthands about the types of resources there are, where I see different things, shortcuts, of course, and of course, the roaming paths of the local FOE, the big bads or super bosses of like any given zone. Etrian Odyssey 5 has a lot of quality of life improvements over 2. I encourage you to pause and read some of the graphics here, which I have stolen wholeheartedly from Sharky. You can find these on the Discord server. Sharky is the game's #1 stan on the Alice and Dara Discord server, and I'm sure they would love to yap at you about the game if you have more questions. Not needing to track back through a level with a wounded party is a huge boon that cannot be overstated. Character building is a lot more interesting in Etrian Odyssey 5. The race class combinations really give you a lot of different levers to pull on when you're looking at your overall party strategies. On the subject of character building, there's also a lot more customization options going on in EO5. It's not quite MMO levels of details. You don't have a million sliders, but you do have RGB sliders and lots of voices to choose from. Uh, I could see players spending a lot of time, like hours, just filling out their roster, having a whole guild full of misfits and just having a blast doing so. If I am being 100% honest, I have not played Etrian Odyssey 5 yet, but in doing research for this video, I find myself increasingly inspired to get my hands on it. I spent a good few minutes last night trying to track down my copy of Etrian Odyssey 2, digging through old bins, and then eventually finding that it was already plugged into my 3DS, which I haven't turned on in a long time, but that's another matter entirely. When I return to Etrian Odyssey, I'm not sure if it'll be for 2 or whether I will try to get my hands on 5. Either way, I feel like this is something that's going to happen in the near future for me. Looking forward to rolling up a new guild full of little creeps and getting my ass kicked, frankly. As far as the challenges this game might present for the streamer, the series has a bit of a difficulty curve. That is a fact. It can be kind of overwhelming for new players, especially when you dive in and you see just so many skills and classes and all these options. It probably feels like it is very easy to make the wrong decision. Uh, and like I said, those options are all available pretty much right away. As soon as you start the game, you see entire skill lists for any character you might want to build. The not quite knowing what the hell is happening of it all can be a little bit frustrating as well for newer players, especially. Personally, I find that it adds to the overall feel and atmosphere. On the technical side, I am not sure how easy it is to effectively stream 3DS games. I assume that it is done mostly via emulation these days, but it's not something I've personally looked into, especially in regards to touchscreen functionality. I'm sure Sharky can provide some input, probably link to something great. Uh, Another thing that might be a hang up is some of the art choices, which vary a lot. Overall, the art direction is really nice. I love the enemy designs. There are a lot of really cute character designs. The environments are beautiful. A lot of the character sprites are really, really charming. Some of them, however, are, uh, we'll call it schlock anime coded, to put it mildly, and some of the VA lines kind of go along with that. Anyway, it's a good game, has about as many issues as any other game in the genre. Why should Alice and Dara, your favorite streamer, put it on what is admittedly an already pretty full docket? Believe it or not, Allison does have experience in old school dungeon crawlers, in TTRPGs, in JRPGs, to varying degrees of familiarity with each of those. We just finished Final Fantasy X very recently on the channel. I would love to hear her thoughts on some of the design and presentation choices as the game unfolds. The music, right up her alley. Like, that's not an arguing point. The music is great. At the very least, we owe it to expose her to the owe it to her to expose her to the soundtrack. If if this game does not get picked, we got to start putting Etrian Odyssey 5 soundtrack on the wheel in different versions. Listen to the whole soundtrack, pick your favorite song from the soundtrack, be creative. We got to make it happen. As a community focused streamer, the opportunity to crowdsource names for guild members or even name them after chatters like you and me will definitely supply some very clippable moments. Evil Goose intentionally misses an enemy so that it kills Stella on the next turn. Primate always hits for 67 damage. This is a fact. This is a guaranteed kill. And, of course, yo, I'm dead? In conclusion, this game was always going to make my ballot, and I hope you give it some consideration for yours. I am playing the Evoland Legendary Edition here, which I obtained as a weekly free game through the Epic Game Store some years ago. It contains Evoland 1 and 2, although much like Final Fantasy, Fire Emblem, Mario, there is no need to play the first game before hopping into the second. There's no real connected plot going on there. While the first game is certainly nostalgia inducing, I honestly can't really recommend it in the same way that I can with Evoland 2. Evoland 2 is a blast, and while I wouldn't say that it is a must play for anyone, I think it delivers on its premise quite beautifully. Evoland 2 is a love letter to the history of gaming, and to adventure games and RPGs in particular. The joke on the Discord seems to be that Evoland 2 is every game ever, in the same way that Stanley Parable is every game ever. It is not as much of an exaggeration as you might initially think. Over the course of the adventure, the art style and presentation gradually shifts around as you go through different, eras or phases of the game, from, 8-bit low-res stuff to, polys and I won't spoil it too much, but there's a lot going on there. The gameplay is pretty simple overall. The cast of characters are charming and familiar. The puzzles are about what you would expect for whatever era the game is currently trying to emulate. You push around a lot of blocks, you step on a lot of the right tiles, you dodge projectiles, and you swing that sword like it's 1986. Honestly, this is a game that's going to grab your attention with its pitch and presentation, or it's not. Well, there are some neat twists and turns later on in the game, and the storytelling is definitely a bit more nuanced and interesting than other games in the 80s were. Uh, at the end of the day, Evoland 2 is exactly what it looks like. Unfortunately, that does mean that some of the flaws in the game are also pretty apparent. You should set your graphics and control settings before you jump in the game because we did not have a settings in the pause menu back in the 80s or early 90s. Evil Land 2 is true to form in that regard. It is not all old school jank, of course. Save points are placed a lot more fairly. You reload after a boss battle pretty quickly, stuff like that. Sometimes I find that the hitboxes can be a little wonky, or that precision movement during some sections might be harder than you want it to be. And certainly, as you kind of shift through the different eras of the game, it might take you a moment to kind of recalibrate your movement to that. As a certified old head, I don't think Allison is going to mind a lot of these, but it is definitely something to keep in mind. Now, why should this be a stream game if it is very straightforward and a little jank? Allison, as previously mentioned, has some old head certifications and has actually lived through the pretty much every era of the gaming that is referenced or presented in the game. She has some experience with all of these and opinions to spare. I would like to hear those opinions. I also genuinely do think she would enjoy the game, even with some of the bumps along the way. And as a chatter, you get a cute, fun, memorable experience. No backseating necessary. I'm not going to twist your arm if you don't think this game is a good fit, or if you've already wheeled and dealed your way into a full ballot. But I do hope that you give this one a fair consideration when the time comes to cast your vote. Mega Man? Mega Man? Mega Man? Can you hear me? Oh man. What's there to say about Mega Man Legends that has not already been said? This game is iconic, incredibly charming, absolute nostalgia bait, even for people who haven't actually played it. Tronbon is the best villain, question mark villain, in the series. I do not have to tell you about this game, but let's do a brief overview. Game came out in 1997, but it is far beyond the days of 20XX. To the best of my knowledge, the Legends series is the furthest forward in the Mega Man timeline, even though it's, been about 30 years since the game came out. In the far future, everyone is robots, and Mega Man Volnut is blasting into a new dimension, the third dimension. First 3D game in the series. Tried out a lot of new things, and the Legends games really do stand out as being unique among Mega Man games, even to this day. You have different mechanics and weapons, you have a town full of NPCs, which is pretty uncommon for Mega Man. The graphics are charming, I find, but you could definitely say they're a little bit dated. They were certainly pushing the limits back in 1997. If you're a fan of the series or just interested in those games that were making that early 2D to 3D transition, I think you owe it to yourself to give this game a look. The 2D to 3D jump was not without flaws. I find the controls can feel a bit stiff and imprecise at times, particularly if you are still kind of new to the game. It can feel kind of hard to line yourself up perfectly to get the shot that you want. I have no idea how well this game holds up on modern hardware. That might be an issue, might not be an issue. I love Roll, I really do. I think she chimes in a little bit too much. She is, as far as operator characters go, she definitely lives up to the Mega Man, uh, uh, you know. Anyway, you can tell that the developers were a little bit worried about players needing that extra help, so that's kind of why I feel that she is so chatty in this game. Unfortunately, I think that there's a reason that the modern Mega Man games have tended to go back towards the 2D style that is more classically associated with the series. Uh, I would love to see a new game in the Legends kind of era, but I don't think it's happening anytime soon. Despite its flaws, Mega Man Legends has some real potential to be an Alison Dara classic. Some of our mutual non stream related friends are real Mega Man heads, and I know Allison doesn't necessarily have an encyclopedic knowledge of the series, but she's been exposed to a lot of it by proxy. She has played a decent number of the games. Pretty sure she's played Legends too. If I am being 10,000% honest, there is some potential the game might bounce. Hardware issues, again, not sure how well it runs on modern hardware. It is a little bit clunky, and some of the design decisions will probably be critiqued as we get through the game. I would really love to see a remaster for this game. That would really make it the ultimate stream experience. Still, as is, I still think it would be a good experience overall. And, I would say that it is worth considering for your vote, but, I'm not going to push you into it. Okay. I almost brushed right by this one. If you want an easy way to make me skip past a game, slap a bunch of explosions and guns and Americana on the cover, and I assure you I will just like walk right past it, won't even enter my mind. After checking out Boulder's clip and doing a bit more research, I think that I might have judged this game a bit too harshly when it first came across my timeline. Metal Wolf Chaos XD is a satire. At least that is my current evaluation. Seems to be what the critics are thinking. I have not dissected the brains of the FromSoft team, obviously, to figure out what their true intentions were, but in any case, this is a game where a true American patriot president, Michael Wilson, gets strapped into a war mech and blows up the evil secessionist forces of Vice President Dick Hawk, which he's probably a communist or a Nazi or something, it's fine. The gameplay is fast and frantic. All of those rockets and guns you're firing have pretty satisfying effects upon the enemy forces and the environment. Game seems to largely be carried by just cheesy writing, over the top spectacle, just all the violence and explosions and just chaos. It's almost a like Devil May Cry meets Duke Nukem kind of combat based on what I've seen. It is not a game that I would personally buy or play myself, if I'm being honest, but it does seem like it would be a good time with the crew and, a couple of cold ones. The flaws are as self evident as the pros in this case. It's loud and obnoxious. I don't want to be a hater, but I feel like it's a game where I would be turning down the volume a lot. Characters do not seem very complicated. The plot, I am guessing, is not going to be very surprising, except in the sense of absurdity. I don't think it's hiding anything particularly compelling or eye-opening. I don't think this game is going to like change your life or make you think about the world in a different way. If you want something to enjoy for a relatively high chaos stream, which we don't get too often on Alice and Dara, and there will definitely be fun moments, this game is worth a slot on your ballot in that case. If that doesn't sound like something that you think you would enjoy, or is something that you think Allison would enjoy, or maybe you don't think the community would enjoy it, there are plenty of other options. Give them a shot. Alright, it is time to get cancelled. Ready for the hot take from today's video? I do not think visual novels make for great stream games. Yet, this game, Process of Elimination, I have actually ranked higher than either of the last two on my internal list. I recognize I'm in the minority on this visual novel take. While visual novels have not featured heavily on the Alice and Dara channel so far, I know they are a staple for the wider community. I just personally find that VNs are better enjoyed either firsthand or in a slower paced format, something like a YouTube video or even a blog. But I am not here to vote for the games that I would like to watch. I am not here to vote for the games for some random streamer to play. I am here to vote for the games that our streamer, our emer, will enjoy streaming the most, and that our community will enjoy watching and engaging with the most. And I think Process of Elimination is a great fit for that. Honestly, based on the research I've done and the heartfelt testimony of Lerf, Process of Elimination seems like a standout for the genre. Nowhere near as popular as Danganronpa or Umineko or any of a dozen other VNs that you've heard of and played through. So folks will not be listening to like their 12th playthrough of a new narrator reading the same lines again and again. The gameplay elements, such as they are, seem a bit more engaging and meaningful. There's some real like choices to be made in how you place people and things like that. Some real uncertainty as to what might be going on in the plot for a first playthrough. There's some divergence, it seems like, that'll make individual playthroughs a bit more unique than a lot of visual novels are. That is an issue I have with a lot of VNs. Another issue I have with a lot of mystery novels and VNs in particular is the characterization and the way it all seems to get twisted whenever we need somebody to be the new villain. Their previous character development gets thrown out the window, and the other characters also are acting out of character. The rule abiding, play it by the book cop chooses to stay up past their bedtime and throw rocks at windows because the peace loving hippie got bullied into buying a gun that day by the real villain who just wants money now, despite whatever their earlier goals might have been. And did I mention that, like, this third guy over here was a werewolf the whole time, even though it's been a full moon on like 3 previous nights and it's never come up before? That kind of stuff. I do not think process of elimination will fall into these pitfalls. Admittedly, I cut my research a bit short on this one. I didn't want to dig too much into the mystery and the characters, as I think it'll be fun trying to figure it out chapter by chapter along with our Emer. I'm placing a lot of faith in the very few reviews that I've read and in Lerf's testimony. I hope that the payoffs and revelations and triumphs and tragedies will live up to the hype. I can't tell you that they will. You will have to search your own heart on this one, but for my money, I think this game, Process of Elimination, has the potential to be something really special. Alright, this one's pretty easy to sell me on. The Emer has enjoyed just about every Remedyverse game they've played, to the best of my knowledge. The chat really enjoyed Control, had some very iconic moments. It is something that we know and love. While Quantum Break came out before Alan Wake 2 and Control, it was like, I would say Alan Wake 2 and Control together have really captured the Emer's heart, and Quantum Break came out before that. The gameplay is probably going to be a little bit rougher. I still think we should give it a chance. Also, did you see the graphic that Polter has ready to go? Oh, yeah. It's time. For those not in the know, Quantum Break is something of a proto Control, which we know and love, where you balance run and gun gameplay with cool time manipulation powers. And of course, you still get those classic live action video segments that we know and love from Remedy, as well as that pinch of Remedy weirdness and mystery that we know and love. Will this be a flawless streaming experience? No, absolutely not. Will it have some rough spots? Yeah, it will. Will it be 100% worth it? Yes, I believe it will be. And I think we also just owe it to the Emer, who we know and love, to have an easy excuse to play through this game before Control Resonance comes out, which is a game I believe they have already committed to. This one should be worth a playthrough, worth a watch, and it is certainly, certainly worth my vote. Resident Evil 2 1998. Hey, this game is from the 90s, just like me. What's to say? If you told me that this game was going to show up on Genre Defining Games Month, I would not blink an eye. To be honest, I'm not even really a huge Resident Evil guy. I am more of a Dino Crisis gal. Dinosaurs are cool, zombies are gross. That's all there is to it, but let's get into it a little bit. By now, you have certainly heard the Emer yap about their love for the first Resident Evil game. Did you know that Resident Evil 2 is the direct sequel to Resident Evil? Hard to believe, but it is 95% true. RE2 is set in a big city rather than a spooky mansion, but you still have that very theatrical horror game presentation. You still have a lot of scary monsters to either run into or run away from or shoot with guns. You've got some very iconic characters and some iconic voice lines. Uh, as it's not a series that I personally enjoy, I don't have a ton to say about how the gameplay stacks up to other games in the series or the genre, but our Emer sure will. And honestly, despite the game's flaws, which it does have some flaws, and its age, which it is pretty old, is about as old as I am, the fact that it is pretty well explored at this point is also, we most people have an opinion on Resident Evil or Resident Evil 2 already. But I do think that it really plays into Allison's strengths as a streamer, particularly in its context as the follow up to Resident Evil. We'll get to hear the ins and outs of what went wrong, what lessons were learned from the original, what new things they tried, whether or not those new things have worked, what things we see that start in Resident Evil 2 that go on throughout the rest of the series. All of these things are things that I want to hear the streamer's thoughts on. It is not a game that I am personally itching to play, not even really a game that I would be itching to watch in any other context. But from the perspective of getting the Alison Dara experience, that is definitely something that I can be convinced to slap my vote down for. And if that is something that you feel like you would like to see as well, go ahead and place your vote. All right. This game is just it's just really pretty. This is another love letter to games of yesteryear, this time more on the action platformer side of things. Old school Ninja Gaiden games in particular are the main visual inspiration, at least. But much like Evo Land 2, there is a bit more here than initially meets the eye. We have not really seen side scroller action combat game out of the Alice and Dara channel yet, so this would be a bit of a divergence from the norm and a chance to get her thoughts on things that we have not yet picked her brain on. Also, like, just look at the game, man. It's really pretty. The music rocks. The presentation as a whole is very satisfying and pleasant. Controls seem very crisp. Like the, I don't have a lot of bad things to say about this game. If it doesn't make the cut, it will probably be something that I will play for myself sometime in the future. And even if it does make the cut and I see it on the stream, I just might buy it like a few months down the line here when I have time and interest. It is right up my alley for sure. To tide us over until then, here's some footage of me doing an okay job at Ninpec. Alright, what about the flaws? The Messenger is a good deal longer than an old school Ninja Gaiden title. I think it would be a 3 to 5 stream commitment, which might be more than people want to see for this type of game. I'm not sure. Depending on how much fun we are having and how much of a completionist we want to be, it could be a little bit longer. I genuinely don't know. As we saw from Celeste streams, which is probably the closest game equivalent to something we've already streamed, uh, I think that the Emer probably won't be going above and beyond for like 100% platinum gamer kind of stuff, which I also think is for the best. That does mean that if you are a mega fan of this game, there might be bits of it that get skipped over that you felt should have shown up on the stream, and I'm sorry about that. Really, my only worry with the game is that it might overstay its welcome if it doesn't really click for Allison. But I do have a lot of faith in it, and I mean, look at the game. It's really pretty. Go watch the sizzle reels or some gameplay footage after this. Yeah, I think it'll make your day better. Even if it doesn't sway your vote, I think it'll make your day better. Howdy, partner. Y'all might be wondering just what in tarnation this here West of Loathing game is about. Looks like a lot of stickmen tumbling around, committing acts of violence and alcoholism. Well, you ain't wrong on that count, but let me spin you a little yarn here. Allison and I go way back. Oh, further than that, I'm afraid. Further? Yeah, about that far back. And way back in yonder times, before these here video games got all newfangled and fancy like, us poor kids would play free games on the internet. Games like Kingdom of Loathing. Kingdom of Loathing was a browser based game with graphics like, well, like about what you're seeing on the screen right now, only with less animations and more varietals of alcohol. And some of the funniest and most memorable writing you could shake a stick at. Now, I ain't sure why you enjoy shaking sticks at other folks' writing so much, but if that's the kind of thing that gets you going, you're going to be shaking at a whole lot of these ones. Sorcerers commune with the great unknown. Disco bandits are stealing everything that ain't nailed down. And don't get me started on them dang seal clubbers. And if you just so happen to take down the naughty sorceress and complete your quest, oh brother, you're just getting started. And for a free browser game back in the early aughts, why, I'd say that's more than plenty enough for endless hours of entertainment. Now, by the time the old Emer and I ran into each other, we were more or less past our Kingdom of Loathing days. There were new demons that needed slaying, streets that needed tussled, Minoans that needed farmed, and a whole mess of other things pulling at our attention. But while we were focused elsewhere, the old magic was brewing. We trundled on, a occasionally reminiscing about the grassy knoll or werewolves and warwolves. But when the cows came home, I dare say neither of us was prepared. Now, I can't rightly speak to Allison's experience with West Lothian. I certainly bent her ear about my own journeys at the time. I hustled my horses, punched plenty of cows, danced with clowns, and perhaps dipped my hand into one too many spittoons. I ain't proud of it, but I did what had to be done. It's a rough world out there. Everyone and their mama has some wise to crack at you. It's the kind of thing that has a man walking stupid. Takes some real muscle, moxie, mysticality, and good old grit to get through sometimes. And did I mention that it's a black and white game that still has a colorblind mode? If y'all ain't heard of this game here before, boy, I'll tell you what. It sure is something special. Now, I'll be the first to admit that the game ain't flawless. Goes without saying that it ain't too much to look at least by typical standards. That stick figure charm ain't for everybody, that's for sure. Combat's often a combination of a puzzle and a stat check more often than not. Some of the puzzles are intentionally a bit obtuse or tedious. You can easily miss things, whether they be jokes and japes or genuine finds and tools you'll wish you had down the line. Now, most of these missables can be backtracked for, and in fact, you're probably going to be doing a fair amount of backtracking along that old dusty trail to begin with. Fortunately, travel is pretty quick and convenient, but you better get used to seeing the same screens time and again. Now, with all the cute little details and jokes, that ain't necessarily a bad thing, but if that charm wears off for you, it might tax your patience a bit. Well, shit. You caught me rambling again. Been known to do that from time to time, especially when you got me feeling all nostalgic and shit. I sure do hope you fine folks give this game some serious consideration for your ballots. And if you're hungry for something to tide you over while we wait for them votes to roll in, maybe head on over to the Old Kingdom. Poke around for a bit. See if it suits your fancy. Bit of a try before you buy sort of deal. And on the off chance this game does make the grade, I've heard that there's something else out there that might need our future attention. A shadow on the horizon, you could say. Oh, but that's a story for another time, lassie. It seems your old pal forgot how alphabetical order works, because there's one more game to cover before calling it quits, and I know you've been eyeing that run time. Okay, I lied about the alphabetical order thing. I figured it was only fair that the last game I covered be the one I submitted. A bit of anti-favoritism, if you will. Or perhaps saving the best for last. Without further ado, let's play some Wargroove. I mean, do I need to say more? Oh, I do, huh? Well, let's get to it. Let's play a little Wargroove. This is one of the introductory chapters. I believe this is chapter 3 or 4, depending on how you count. We're still learning mechanics, all of that good stuff. We're up against Ragna, who is a bit of a rival character and a personal favorite for this game. One thing you might look at and be a little bit overwhelmed by at first glance is the sheer number of units and characters and factions in this game. Ultimately, the factions are not that different from each other. They're pretty much just reskins. The main difference between, your army and your opponent's army is going to be your starting situation on the map and your commander. This game plays most similarly to the Advanced Wars series. If you have played an Advanced Wars game, you're going to come in and know pretty much what's going on here. We are capturing buildings on the map in order to gain income, in order to gain the ability to deploy more units. We are crashing our units into their units. We are scuffing over territory. And the main difference here is that in Advanced Wars, your commander is kind of off the battlefield, has some little tweaks that affect the way your units work, and has maybe a big flashy effect that they play a few times a battle. In Wargroove, your commander is on the battlefield. They're a tank, they do big damage, and if they go down, you lose. You can still lose by losing all of your buildings, or in the case of most maps, by losing your stronghold. Here on this introductory chapter, we don't have a stronghold, but our opponent does. This is, a bit lopsided, but they're still teaching us the mechanics. I don't even think we have access to our groove, our titular war groove in this map. That is one of the things that really makes different commanders stand apart, is each of them has their activated ability that does something flashy. For Mercia here, it is a AoE heal. It restores health to all of your troops, and because this game, functions by Advanced Wars rules, the stronger your troops are, the closer they are to full health, the more damage they do in battle. A unit that is at half health is going to do, it's not quite half damage, but they're going to do, significantly less damage than a unit that is at full health. And this includes units like the commander, who, don't go down, they don't lose units per se, but health and what looks like the unit cap when you are in the battle there are, rough approximations of each other. So in this early part of the game, we are just kind of moving forward, posturing on the map, and Ragna is doing the same. You see we have pretty similar amounts of material here. They've got the stronghold, but we've got a couple extra houses. Each of us is on a single barracks. You see here I turning on the automatic turn end system, turning off the confirmation just to make it play a little faster. If you're newer to the game, you might want to, turn some of those features off. Also worth pointing out that I have the red-green colorblind mode turned on here. I am red-green colorblind. That's how I play the game. If you want to play these games with different settings, be my guest. I find it pretty easy to tell the units apart on the battlefield, but there are some things where it is nice for me personally to have that red-green colorblind mode turned on. You can view, as I am here, unit movement ranges, so you can kind of plan ahead, much as you would in Advance Wars, Fire Emblem, that kind of thing. Here we are using our knights to knock down this building while keeping them out of the range of the enemy spear. Knocking down the building is mostly there just to kind of fiddle with their income a bit, but it is also there to eat up a turn. Units have to spend an attack to get a building. Now here is one of the cool things in Wargroove, the critical hit system. Every unit has their own unique criteria for a critical hit. For swordsmen, which are kind of your low-cost grunt units, you can see here they only cost 100 gold as opposed to, say, 250 for a pike or 600 for a knight. Swordsmen do a critical hit when they are next to your commander. So, you see I used my swordsman to get up in there, smack their swordsman for huge damage. Here Ragna is tussling with my knight, but that's perfectly fine. Doing that meant that she couldn't capture, has to pull this swordsman out of the way to capture, and it also pulled her out of position, which is the real reason I had my knight come over here. By forcing units to choose between, capturing things, attacking, moving around, you can kind of pull them in or out of advantageous positions. On this map here, I'm going to be going for a Ragna kill. I almost always go for a Ragna kill here. You can pretty easily knock down the stronghold if she leaves herself open on the bottom. But, it's pretty easy for, this low-level kind of early game map to just bait the enemy commander into a disadvantageous position. As you see here, I have cleared that little knight or that little swordsman down there. Now I'm going to use my own swordsman Once again, they're going to get this critical hit. You see the flashing damage percentage there, although I clicked through it pretty quickly. Even so, you can see here, Ragna does a lot more damage to a swordsman than a swordsman does to a Ragna. But the goal here is to keep Ragna on low health for a while. I can pop my knight back here, reinforce it back to full health. That's one of the advantages to having more buildings on your backline, is you have more effective health that you can use for reinforcements, things like that. There's also a reason that it's advantageous to capture or knock down enemy buildings when you can. Here, enemy swords are going to come in. As you can see, they didn't get the critical hit, so they aren't doing a lot of damage, even though I'm not in the forest here. And Ragna makes the mistake of stepping out of the forest to make this attack. That is going to open her up to some big damage coming in here in a second. You can see, once again, just kind of moving swords forward. This time our swords are doing 20 damage to her, which is quite a lot for swords. And in return, because she's at low health and my swordsmen are sheltered by this forest, they're only taking half, as opposed to the, 90% or so that they took last time. For our commander, we're going to move up here to the forest so that we have that defensive bonus. We've now kind of taken hold of this defensive position on the battlefield. We're going to whop the spears. And this is another thing in Advanced War style games. The attacker often has an advantage, not just because you could kill a unit before it could strike back, but because weakening a unit reduces the damage that it deals in return. Just going to use my knights here again to knock down this building. Just got to force them to spend their actions either taking it back, we're eliminating their ability to reinforce, and we are also, attacking their income, although that's not going to be too much of an issue in this one. Here, Ragna chases down those swords, those wounded swordsmen, gets the kill, but again, she is out of position here, almost surrounded, and because these spears are so weak, they're not even dealing big damage to the knights that they're supposed to be countering. I don't show it in this battle, but I will show later the codex, where you can kind of go in and look and see exactly how much damage a unit, exactly given, random number generation, things like that, approximately how much damage any unit will deal to any other type of unit in kind of a fair fight, per se. Here, I'm just kind of poking around with my knight, seeing what kind of damage I can do. You can see I could deal like almost half health to that stronghold. Like I said, it is pretty easy to knock down the stronghold in this map if you can kind of keep your enemy pinned. But it's going to be much faster for us, I believe, to just kill Ragna. In fact, I might have a kill. I don't think I have the kill this turn, but I definitely have it next turn. So we'll just play kind of slow and steady here. Put some damage on her from... Oh, not right there. Yeah. Want to kind of loop around. My knights can take a hit, especially if I keep them out of range of the spears on the right. So having them be the ones who stick on the road here, not too bad. You can see Ragna's attacks still dealing decent damage, but if she were initiating that attack, she'd nearly kill that knight. The knight's critical hit comes when it is able to move a full 6 squares before attacking, so that's why I positioned that one there. I want to be able to chase her down if something goes amiss, but between our attack with our commander here, you can see she's dealing almost no damage in retaliation now between the low health and the forest there. And these swordsmen are going to bring her down to 1 HP. Look at that pixel. Will it kill fans rejoice? Yeah, here I pop in just to kind of gripe about leaving her at 1 HP, but this map is pretty much over. It is an early game map. I didn't want to show anything too complicated here, but we will be looking at another map here in a second. Maybe I'll do some fun intros or something as well. You can see here, it's not going to make too much difference what they're doing on their turn with Ragna surrounded. She's got nowhere to go, and she does not have the troops to fight her way out to kind of cut her a path. She's going to recapture that house because it's the least you could do. As you can see, when you recapture a building with a low health unit, the building starts at lower health as well. And we're going to go ahead and give the kills to these swordsmen here. Ragna's killed a few swordsmen, so I feel like letting them get the final blow is only fitting. I love these cute little intro scenes. You really get to zoom in, see all the cute graphics. This is iconic, I believe. Just, yeah, it's because you're kind of being a brunk, so I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to not continue this conversation. And then, of course, Ragna is the rival character, but she is not the big bad. Dun dun dun. And look at that. Beautiful. The S. We did a great job, team. Let's see what we got in the next one. I'm just gonna flip through the codex here for a bit while I yap. Detailed info on every unit, how they perform against other units, their costs, critical hit criterias, what each commander's war groove does. All the information you need is here. This is probably a good time to mention that one of the reasons I chose this game specifically is because way back in the day, when it was new and shiny, and I was telling Allison about my own playthrough, she was still a bit hesitant. I knew that she enjoyed the genre. We discussed Advance Wars at the time. This was before her Fire Emblem awakening, notably. Her awakening came during Three Houses, I'd say, more than awakening, but that's another story altogether. She did, however, end up buying the game at a later date, with full intent to play it, and just never got around to it. We've all been there. It might even be installed on her Switch still. I'm not sure. If this game does end up being picked, I'll check in with her, and if her version is a hassle to stream for whatever reason, I will provide a copy that is more amenable. I just think it would be nice if one of the winning games is one she's already decided she wants to play, even if that decision isn't necessarily recent. Now, though, let's get back to some Wargroove. This is from the arcade mode. We have chosen Caesar as our commander, and this is at the normal difficulty and the first map. There are a number of maps that can be randomly chosen at each stage. Most of them are much more symmetrical than you saw during the story mode. You can see here that we go first. We have a similar number of structures captured and available. The enemy starts with an extra unit. That is mostly to make up for the fact that we can recruit a unit on our first turn here. I'm going to go ahead and kind of play this a little aggressively. I like to put pressure on the enemies in these types of games. I don't like to play too passively. I try to make good trades when I can, but at the end of the day, I'm here to punch people in the face, right? And so with this one, I think that the right play is going to be to recruit just a swordsman for now. Swordsmen are very cost-effective recruits, and they capture buildings just as well as a commander does, right? You end up needing to do a lot of capturing. You end up needing to just kind of put bodies on squares sometimes. Swordsmen are great at that. This map does generate a lot of income just passively. You can see we have a lot of houses captured. 1, 2, 3, 4, plus the barracks, plus the stronghold just at the very beginning here. So that 100 gold that we are spending on the swordsman is going to allow us to, pick up a knight probably every other turn here. Knights are a highly mobile unit, and they're very good at knocking down buildings, chasing down fleeing enemies. They're a good counter to this archer here that they have deployed. And I am actually going to play kind of cautiously around the archer. I'm going to give them the opportunity to shoot our commander if they would like, but I'm not going to give them the opportunity to shoot the swordsman. This turn I'm going to give them neither opportunity. I kind of want them to either commit to moving forward or up here. So I think they have overcommitted on going up, and that is going to give us the ability to kind of tussle over this barracks at the bottom. If we can completely cut off their ability to recruit for a turn or two, this game is going to be over real quick. So going to move up the knight here so that it is in a good position where it can kind of chase down the archer or knock down the building or, do whatever we want really. That pup there is a pretty mobile unit. The war dogs or the pups or whatever you want to call them have a movement of 5 compared to the 6 of the knight. They don't do near as much damage. They don't have nearly as much health. They are, I'd say, pretty cute though, and that is important. Here you can see they're going to send the pups after our commander, Caesar, the best commander, the big pup. One thing to note here is that we just chase them off. You can see all pups get away safely. No pups are harmed. They just like to play a little rough, as pups do. And Caesar here also never takes damage. You can see that we've got some humans for that. And, commanders can take a beating. Commanders regain about 5% HP at the start of their turn as well. So it is to your benefit to kind of draw attacks with the commander if you can do so safely. Here we're going to go ahead and chase off that last pup, let them know they're on the wrong side of this conflict. They're going to go play in the forest probably. And then we're going to use our swordsman here. We're going to get that critical hit for attacking next to the commander and just wipe that archer off the map. That archer was too far forward. Uh, Archers have a range of 3. I'm not sure why they pulled it that far forward to attack our commander, but that is certainly a decision they made today. They have also recruited a ballista. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to check my codex, and I'm going to go, what is a ballista actually realistically going to do to us? Ballista are specifically an anti-air unit. They can attack ground units, of course, but as you see here, they don't deal a ton of damage to them. They deal a lot of damage to air units, but even with the critical hit for the ballista, which is shooting at minimum range without moving, ballista cannot move and shoot like archers can. Even a critical hit is not going to kill any of our units outright, and if we can get a little bit of damage on the ballista first, I think that it's just kind of going to be an expensive waste of money for them. So I'm going to pull this knight forward. Because it's getting the critical hit here, you see I get to choose between knocking down their barracks or dealing 45% to the commander. I'm going to choose to disable their barracks. That is as good as killing whatever unit they would have pushed out of it next turn, at least in my opinion. Obviously they get to keep the money, but just expressing more control around here, bringing them down to just that ballista and their commander while we continue to push out more and more units from our own barracks, I think is going to end up winning us the map here. But just in case it's not, we're going to keep that swordsman up there moving and grooving, going to capture that top barracks. They're certainly going to do the same. There is some risk that because they have more units up top and because they're going to, be able to capture those houses and that barracks, and they're going to have more money when they capture that barracks since they're not spending money on a unit this turn, they might be able to pressure a stronghold, but I believe that we're going to be able to pressure their commander a lot faster than that. You can see here they go. Yep, recruiting that extra barracks. And yeah, like I said, if you've played Advanced Wars, if you've played any game of this kind of, capturing buildings, taking over the map, pushing out units, these kind of turn-based strategy games, the gameplay here is very familiar. It does some unique things around critical hits, around the commanders, around some of the specific unit types. Obviously, pushing into a fantasy setting rather than the kind of modern one that Advance Wars goes through is, going to be unique as well. You don't have like the knight, spear, archer triangle in Advance Wars in quite the same way that you do in most fantasy games, or medieval warfare games, I guess. Also, come on, guys, look at these animations; they're so good. That is really like that was the one thing that when I was looking at this game that kind of drew me in. It's just the beautiful art, the beautiful animations, all the character in each of these little guys. I love the map sprites too. Oh, look at the horse. Oh man, I could look at this game all day, man. And probably after I finish this recording, I am probably gonna finish this arcade mode run through on my own. Let's see. Back up top here, recapturing or capturing our own north side barracks so we can start to exert a little bit of pressure up there on our own. Going to use some of the funds we've been building up to recruit another knight down here. Their commander's in a pretty bad position, and I expect they're going to want to retreat it. Because we are keeping them off of this bottom barracks, they cannot reinforce their commander there. And in fact, I'm pretty sure you can't reinforce commanders off of barracks in general. It's been a while since I've played too much, so you might be able to do that, but I don't think. Well, certainly if the barracks is not captured, they are not going to be able to do so. Yeah, you can see they're moving up north, going to try to head towards where they've got their army, and I just don't feel like we should give them that opportunity. Going to use the critical hit on the swordsman to take down this ballista, and now this bottom side of the map is fully under our control. Even if they, even if they can bring the commander away and, recover health and bring their army back down to kind of challenge us, 3 barracks to 1 is going to be a pretty big mountain for them to overcome. This is only normal difficulty, so it's not a huge surprise that we are kind of running over this guy. But you can see here, because I've been playing so aggressively, we actually have kind of equalized commander health here. They've been able to make some good attacks. Our own commander took that hit from the archers pretty early on, but it is not going to end up mattering too much unless they can really surprise us here. But with the knights kind of cutting off their retreat up top, and the swordsmen down below, there really is nowhere for this commander to run where it can be safe. Our wounded knight here is mostly just kind of bopping around looking for opportunities to cut off escape routes or maybe bait somebody into a bad attack. We can pull it back to a house and reinforce it, and we might end up doing so. But this map is pretty close to one, I would say. Put an extra swordsman up there to help capture some of those houses. Put an extra knight down here just so we have a highly mobile unit to chase people down with. But as we come in here, I believe they're going to have to choose between letting our knights take big hits at their stronghold or letting them kill their commander. We'll see what they choose. Ah, yeah, staying aggressive. You can see here we're actually at completely equal health. And because they get the first attack here, they're going to knock our commander down to, what's that, maybe about 25, and we're going to knock him down to about 30. So, in theory, that looks good for them, but as you can see, we've got two swordsmen down there, and our groove is ready to go. If we attack right away here, you'd see that we would not actually kill with that swordsman, since they're not directly next to the commander, it's not a critical hit. So we're going to move them down here, and we're going to use Caesar's War Groove. Caesar's Groove is Inspire. It reactivates adjacent units so they can take an extra turn. It is a very powerful effect, and especially works well with swordsmen. So I'm going to have these guys here. They get their full health critical hit. Going to leave them on just a fraction of an HP there. And our second swordsman is going to finish the job and get us the victory. Alright, I know it looked like that guy went down, but as you can see, well done, puppy. Everybody gets away safely. It's a game about hitting people with swords and stuff, but it's not really a game about, like, killing people and murder. Pretty light-hearted take on the genre, as, Advance Wars was as well. And that's Wargroove. It's a good time. I'm sure you've already fallen in love with the cute little guys and certified good pup Caesar, if nothing else. Certainly you've seen enough to make your decision. Is it a perfect game? No, not at all. Some of the later maps are a bit messy. The characters can be kind of generic at times. Some of the higher difficulty challenges can be genuinely frustrating. But I think we owe it to Allison to at least let her give it a shot. I won't twist your arm any further, though. I'm sure this is a lot more of me than you planned on hearing today. And if I'm being honest, this video was a bit more work than I had initially anticipated. I'll be doing a part 2 in the future while I go over the games that didn't make my current ballot. There are some great games there. Some of them might even worm their way onto my final ballot in the coming weeks. Keep your eyes peeled for that one. Might not be today, might not be tomorrow. But I will try to get it out as soon as I can. For now, though, take it easy out there.